In Houston, rising heat isn't just a climate story. It's becoming a fiscal emergency. Once an energy giant defined by its growth, the city is now buckling under the weight of climate-driven infrastructure damage, swelling populations, and revenue that simply can't keep up. Roads are crumbling, storm systems are overwhelmed, and municipal services are faltering, all while Houston's budget is stretched thinner by the year. But this isn't just about one city's battle with nature. It's about the fragility of financial systems when faced with compounding pressures.
Don't get fooled by the label. Subscribe now to uncover what's really behind your favorite brands. And get the truth big food doesn't want you to see.
And Houston is just the first crack in a much larger fault line. What's unfolding across 10 major U.S. cities, from San Francisco's deserted downtown towers to Chicago's pension shortfall and Baltimore's fiscal freefall, reveals a nationwide pattern of economic strain hiding in plain sight. As housing costs spike, middle-class families leave, and tax revenues dwindle, once resilient urban centers are hitting a wall. The problem isn't a sudden shock. It's a slow unraveling tied to outdated policies, shifting demographics, and structural financial limits. These cities aren't just under pressure. They're running out of cash, and the effects are rippling through every level of daily life. America's urban economy is breaking under pressure. In city after city, budgets are crumbling, services are deteriorating, and working families are watching their dollars stretch thinner every day. This isn't some abstract future projection. It's happening now, in 2025. Millions of Americans are already running out of cash, and 10 major U.S. cities are leading the collapse. Houston, San Francisco, Chicago, New York City, Los Angeles, Denver, Boston, Philadelphia, Detroit, and Baltimore. These cities are the early warning signs. Each one tells a different story, but the underlying theme is the same. Rising costs, stagnant wages, shifting economies, and outdated policies have left entire populations vulnerable. And the people paying the price? Regular, everyday Americans, families, workers, renters, whose cities can no longer afford to function. Start with Houston. Once proud of its energy industry and sprawling growth, Houston is now in fiscal quicksand. Climate disasters have done real damage, not just to roads and power lines, but to the city's budget itself. Infrastructure repairs are piling up. The tax base? Growing slower than the need. And the population? Still rising. That might sound good, more people, more money, but it's the opposite. More people means more pressure on a city already falling behind. The money isn't keeping up. The result? Delays in services, breakdowns in infrastructure, and a city struggling to stay above water, literally and financially. Then there's San Francisco, where the tech boom once drove soaring tax revenues. That boom is over. Remote work flipped the model. Office buildings sit empty. Property values have plunged. Businesses have closed or moved. And middle-class families? They're leaving in droves. The tax base is evaporating. A city built on high-density corporate revenue can't function without corporate workers. San Francisco is staring down a new economic reality, a city designed for a past that no longer exists. Chicago isn't faring much better. This is a city haunted by its own financial history. Years of poor governance and unchecked pension obligations have left Chicago drowning in debt. The costs of running the city have outpaced revenue for years. Add in aging infrastructure and overburdened social services, and you get a system cracking under pressure. Chicago tried to raise taxes to fill the gap that only drove more residents away. A vicious cycle. The services get worse, the taxes get higher, and the people who can leave do. What's left behind? A dwindling population, and a budget that doesn't add up. New York City, America's economic powerhouse, is also faltering. It's the same remote work problem as San Francisco, just bigger. Commercial real estate is bleeding value. The city's finances relied heavily on that property tax income. Now it's gone. Meanwhile, the cost of running the city keeps climbing. Labor, security, maintenance, it all adds up. And the people who held the middle of the economy, they're moving out. New York built its model on the assumption that people and businesses would always come. But when they start to go, the cracks in the system become impossible to ignore. Los Angeles is known for its glitz, but behind the image is a budget in crisis. Housing prices are through the roof. Homelessness is surging. The city is spending more and more on emergency services, temporary housing, and law enforcement. But it's not enough. The real estate market has become volatile and unreliable as a revenue source. At the same time, infrastructure costs and social services continue to balloon. The result? A financial model that just doesn't work anymore. A city of extremes, unbelievable wealth and deep poverty, and a government stretched to the breaking point. Denver tells a different story, but it's just as concerning. The city is popular. People want to live there, but that's exactly the problem. The population is growing so fast that the city can't keep up. Schools are overcrowded. Roads are underbuilt. Social services are maxed out. Denver's infrastructure and financial systems were designed for a smaller city. Now, the demand has outpaced the resources. Budgets are strained. Growth has become a burden, not a blessing. Boston, the intellectual capital of America, is also cash-starved. Its world-renowned universities are tax-exempt. That means Boston isn't seeing the kind of municipal revenue it needs to sustain basic services. Meanwhile, the housing market is suffocating. Middle-class families are struggling to stay. The cost of living is driving them out. So, the city ends up in a bind. Incredibly wealthy institutions at the center, but a municipal budget that can't keep up with rising costs. Innovation and intellect aren't paying the bills, and it's showing. Philadelphia and Detroit offer two sides of the same story. Both have faced long-term population decline. Both suffer from poverty and strained public services. In Philadelphia, the tax burden is high, but the revenue just isn't there. That's because people are leaving, and the ones who remain can't shoulder the load alone. Detroit went through the worst of it earlier. The city's infrastructure fell apart as the population shrank. The tax base disappeared. It took years just to stabilize. Now, Detroit is making some progress, but it's still on the edge. These two cities show how hard it is to recover once decline begins. The fiscal wounds don't heal easily. Then there's Baltimore. It's not just deteriorating, it's collapsing. Population loss, vanishing tax revenue, and spiraling costs have pushed the city to the brink. Security costs are up, social service costs are up, and the revenue? It's down. Way down. Baltimore's collapse is the fastest of any major city right now. When a city's financial model relies on population stability and predictable tax income, a sharp drop-off triggers disaster. That's exactly what's happening here. And there's no lifeline in sight. When you step back and look at these cities together, the pattern is clear. Infrastructure is deteriorating. Budgets are failing. Services are collapsing. And people are running out of cash. Not because of one single cause, but because of a series of compounding failures. Outdated fiscal policies, unmanageable cost structures, and demographic trends that weren't planned for. The revenue models these cities relied on, real estate, commercial activity, population growth, have become liabilities. It's not just that things are bad. It's that the systems in place can't adapt fast enough to changing realities. Climate change makes things worse. Cities like Houston are being financially wrecked by repeated climate disasters. The cost of recovery and adaptation is massive, and the funding isn't there. The result? Crumbling infrastructure and fewer resources for everything else. Technological shifts are gutting urban economies. Cities that built their financial base on office towers and downtown commerce, like San Francisco and New York, are discovering that remote work has permanently changed the game. Those tax revenues are never coming back the way they were. That's not a small adjustment. That's a total disruption of the foundation their budgets were built on, and inequality is making all of it harder to fix. Cities with immense wealth, like Boston and LA, still can't balance their books because that wealth isn't taxable at the city level or isn't accessible. Meanwhile, the cost of services continues to rise. So cities end up trapped, too poor to fund services, too dependent on fragile revenue sources, and too stretched to innovate fast enough. For cities like Philadelphia and Detroit, the long-term demographic changes are almost impossible to reverse. Once the population begins to collapse, the tax base disappears. Services fall apart. People leave. It's a death spiral. And while some places are trying to stabilize, the resources just aren't there to spark real recovery. That's why reform is urgent. Across every city in this list, the story is the same. Without major changes to tax structures, spending priorities, and urban planning, these places are headed toward permanent fiscal instability. The American city, once a symbol of opportunity, is now a warning sign. If we don't confront the structural weaknesses in our urban models, the collapse won't be limited to these 10 cities. It will spread. The resilience of American cities depends on their ability to evolve. And right now, too many of them are trapped by legacy systems and political inertia. The warning signs are flashing. These 10 cities aren't outliers. They're the leading edge of a crisis that touches every corner of the country. If you live in one of these cities, you know what this feels like. The longer commute times, the slower emergency response, the higher rent, the disappearing jobs, the services that don't work like they used to. This isn't theoretical. It's daily life. It's the direct result of financial systems that no longer serve the people they were built for. That's why this conversation matters. This isn't just about budgets and spreadsheets. It's about the future of urban life in America. Whether cities can provide safety, opportunity, and stability. Whether people can afford to stay in the places they call home. Whether local governments can meet the most basic needs of their residents. And right now, the answer in too many places is no. If you found this breakdown helpful, make sure to hit that like button. Share this video with someone who needs to understand what's happening in our cities. Drop a comment below, especially if you're feeling the squeeze in your own neighborhood. And don't forget to subscribe for more deep dives into the real issues shaping our lives. Let's get one thing straight. This isn't a blip. This isn't just bad luck. What's happening in these 10 cities is a result of years, decades of financial neglect, political cowardice, and systems that were never built to withstand the kind of economic and social shocks we're seeing in 2025. We've been told for years that America's cities are engines of opportunity, that if you work hard and hustle, you can make it. But in Houston, families are working 2 jobs and still falling behind. Because when roads are flooded, utilities fail, and infrastructure collapses under climate stress, people pay the price. Not just an inconvenience, but in their wallets, their health, their security. Houston's not alone. Cities across the country are feeling the weight of environmental disasters, with no backup plan and no budget cushion. We're watching the climate crisis bleed straight into the fiscal collapse. In San Francisco, it's not hurricanes or heat waves. It's empty skyscrapers and silent streets. The city once celebrated as the beating heart of American tech is now a ghost town in parts of downtown. Office vacancies are through the roof. Companies that once fueled local tax revenues are gone or downsizing. The wealth remains, for a few, but the financial structure that propped up the city? Hollowed out. Property tax revenue is vanishing. Businesses are boarded up. And the people who held the city together, middle-income workers, young families, are fleeing to places where life doesn't cost 4 paychecks a month. This isn't just about San Francisco, either. New York is right there in the same boat. The city that never sleeps? It's taking financial naps more and more often. The office towers that funded so much of the city's budget are less valuable than ever. The hybrid work shift isn't a trend. It's the new normal. The city didn't plan for that. So now it's bleeding revenue and scrambling to adjust while costs skyrocket. Public transportation needs repairs. Emergency services need funding, but the money's not there. And as taxes rise to try and close the gaps, the middle class keeps heading out, taking their income and their tax dollars with them. Chicago is another cautionary tale. The city's been dragging an anchor for years. Pensions, massive pension liabilities that stretch back decades. They don't go away. They don't shrink. They grow. And now, those obligations are eating the city alive. Chicago has to keep paying those bills, which means less money for schools, for cops, for transit. And what happens when residents don't see results? They leave, or they stop trusting city leaders. Either way, the tax base erodes. The spiral continues. Raise taxes, people flee. Cut services, people suffer. Either way, the budget gap grows. Then you have Los Angeles, drowning in its own contradictions. the wealthiest entertainment capital in the world, and the epicenter of a homelessness crisis that costs taxpayers billions and shows no signs of slowing down. The real estate market is unstable. Affordable housing is a myth. The cost of building anything, from housing to highways, is sky high. So the city keeps spending, but it can't keep up. Social services, infrastructure maintenance, public safety. It's all too expensive, and the revenue streams aren't dependable. LA is trying to hold the line with a broken sword. Denver's story feels more hopeful on the surface. The population's booming. The energy's high. But underneath that, the city is buckling. Growth is outpacing capacity. People are arriving faster than Denver can build schools, hospitals, roads, and housing. That puts massive pressure on budgets. The system was never meant to stretch this far, this fast. And now, the stretch is starting to snap. Financially, Denver is aging in fast forward. And the same young professionals who moved there for a better life are suddenly finding themselves priced out, frustrated, and underserved. Boston has its own unique brand of fiscal dysfunction. It's rich in name, in education, and talent. But all those elite universities, tax-exempt. So while Boston hosts some of the wealthiest, most prestigious institutions in the world, its municipal budget doesn't benefit. Meanwhile, skyrocketing housing prices make it impossible for families to stay. So the people who teach in public schools, work in hospitals, drive buses, they're pushed out. And the city? It's stuck trying to provide services without the money or the manpower to do it effectively. It's a city of knowledge and a crisis of affordability. In Philadelphia, the cycle is brutal. High poverty, high taxes, low growth. The city is bleeding residents, but it can't afford to lose a single one. Every departure chips away at the tax base. Every lost resident means less funding for schools, safety, sanitation. But with high poverty comes higher service demand. So the city is spending more than ever while bringing in less than it needs. That math doesn't work. And when services degrade, quality of life follows. Philadelphia is locked in a financial chokehold, and there's no easy way out. Detroit knows that feeling. For decades, it's been the poster child for what happens when a city collapses. It lost people. It lost industry. It lost hope. Infrastructure decayed. Neighborhoods were abandoned. But here's the difference. Detroit is showing small signs of progress. It's been through the worst, and it's clawing its way back. That's not to say things are fixed. They're not. But Detroit offers a glimpse of what happens when a city hits bottom and still finds a way forward. Cautiously, slowly, deliberately. But it's a warning, too. No city is too big to fail. Detroit did, and others could follow. Baltimore is racing toward that same cliff. The city is collapsing in real time. The population is shrinking fast. Crime is surging. Budgets are imploding. The tax base is disintegrating. Baltimore can't sustain itself under these pressures. The city's financial structure was already fragile, and now it's fracturing. No one's coming to the rescue. The downward momentum is accelerating. When a city's essential services break down, people leave. When they leave, the revenue collapses. When the revenue collapses, the services die. It's a feedback loop of urban failure, and Baltimore is living it now. So what does this all mean? It means the old way doesn't work. Cities can't depend on property taxes and commercial space forever. They can't base their entire financial existence on the assumption of endless growth. That model is broken. And unless there's serious reform, real innovation in how cities manage their budgets, invest in infrastructure, and plan for the future, collapse becomes a default setting. We're seeing systemic vulnerabilities exposed in every region. And while the specifics differ, the core problems repeat. Outdated policies, revenue instability, rising expenses, and shrinking populations. These aren't just budgetary issues. They're quality of life catastrophes. Public services are the foundation of urban living. When they crumble, everything else follows. So what now? We can't just shuffle the numbers and hope it gets better. Cities need to rethink how they tax, how they spend, how they grow. They need to cut through the red tape, invest in resilient infrastructure, modernize their financial systems, and prepare for realities of remote work, demographic shifts, and climate instability. There's no time left to wait. These cities represent the early tremors. But make no mistake, this is a national issue. What happens in San Francisco or Baltimore doesn't stay there. These are hubs of industry, trade, education, and culture. Their failure reverberates. Their collapse affects everything from national GDP to social mobility. If major American cities can't provide basic services, if people can't afford to live, work, and raise families there, the entire country feels it. We are at a crossroads. Cities can adapt, innovate, and reform, or they can sink deeper into dysfunction and decay. But no one is coming to save them. The choice is local. The urgency is now. If you're still watching, it's because you know something's wrong. You've seen it in your neighborhood. The potholes that never get fixed. The bus route that suddenly disappears. The wait times for emergency services that used to be minutes. Now, it's hours. The sense of decline isn't paranoia. It's real, it's measurable, and it's spreading. These 10 cities aren't outliers. They're not unique disasters. They're canaries in the coal mine. And while their problems look different on the surface, climate in Houston, tech collapse in San Francisco, pensions in Chicago, population loss in Baltimore, they all point to the same underlying disease. America's cities are running on a financial model that no longer works. It used to be simple. Growth would solve everything. More people meant more tax revenue. More development meant more funding. As long as the economy kept expanding, the bills would get paid. But in 2025, that equation is broken. Growth has slowed. Costs have exploded. The safety nets are thin. And now, the cities that relied most heavily on that old formula are unraveling. Wages aren't keeping up. Housing is unaffordable. Infrastructure is aging out. And while Washington fights its political battles, local governments are left holding the bag. They can't print money. They can't run deficits like the federal government. So when revenue dries up, cuts happen. First, it's the non-essentials. Then it's core services. Then it's structural collapse. Let's stop pretending this is just a bad economy. This is a reckoning. A generation of short-term thinking, patchwork fixes, and avoidance has come due. You can't defer maintenance on bridges, buses, water systems, and pensions forever. Eventually, the bill arrives, and it's massive. And here's the terrifying truth. If these 10 cities, many of them wealthy, economically important, and resource-rich, can't keep their heads above water, what chance do smaller, less connected cities have? This isn't about political parties. It's not about pointing fingers left or right. It's about whether American cities can continue to function, whether they can provide the basic infrastructure for modern life, roads, water, power, transit, schools, safety. Without those, a city is just a name on a map. We are watching the slow-motion dismantling of the urban promise. Not because of a single disaster, but because of compounding failure, climate, technology, inequality, population shifts, and outdated finance systems all converging at once. And unless radical reform happens soon, more cities will fall. One by one. Quietly. Completely. So talk about this. Don't let it slide past your feed. These are the cities where millions live, work, and raise their kids. If you live in one of them, tell us what's happening. Leave a comment. Hit like if this connects. Share it with someone who needs to see it. And subscribe, because this is just the beginning of a much bigger story.